My girlfriend declared, "I'm moving in with my male best friend for financial reasons without asking me first." I said, "That works out perfectly." What I told her later that night made her pack in tears. There is a certain kind of quiet that settles in a home after a storm. It is not peace, not yet. It is the sound of the wind having finally exhausted itself, leaving you to survey the damage. In my case, the storm was my girlfriend of 4 years, Sarah, and the damage was the life I thought we were building. But as I sit here now, I realize something crucial. The storm did not destroy my foundation. It just cleared away a house that was already rotten to the core. Let me start by saying I am not the kind of man who is easily fooled. I am a systems analyst. My entire career is built on seeing patterns, anticipating problems, and understanding how one small change can bring a whole network crashing down. I applied that same logic to my life, which is why I never understood men who complained about their girlfriends ignoring them or spending all their money. My relationship with Sarah was built on what I thought was a solid framework: mutual goals and shared investment. When we met, she was smart, ambitious, and had a clear 5-year plan. We were a team. We agreed to combine our efforts to save for a house. It was a joint venture. I made more money, so I contributed a larger percentage to our shared savings, but she was contributing too. Every decision was a discussion. We were building something, brick by brick, and I respected that. I loved her for it. Her best friend, a guy named Ethan, was the only variable I could never quite account for. He was one of those people who is perpetually on the verge of making it big. He dressed in expensive clothes he could not afford, drove a leased car he was always behind on, and carried himself with the smug certainty of a man who has never had to face a real consequence. He was always around, offering unsolicited advice, making little jokes at my expense that were just plausible enough to be deniable. Sarah always defended him. "He is like a brother to me," she would say. "He just does not have the stable foundation you do, Mark." The stability she mentioned was me. I was the foundation. And last Tuesday, she decided to test just how much weight I could bear. She came home from work with a strange energy, a mix of nervousness and forced cheerfulness. She sat me down on the couch, the one we spent 3 weekends picking out together. Then she dropped the bomb. It was not a request, it was a declaration. "I have some amazing news," she started, a little too brightly. "Ethan's roommate is moving out at the end of the month. I am going to take the spot." I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline. There was not one. She rushed to explain, her words tumbling over each other. "Think about it, Mark. It is purely for financial reasons. His rent is so much cheaper than my half of the bills here. I could save an extra $1,000 a month. We could get our house so much faster. It is the perfect solution." I let the silence hang in the air. She wanted a reaction. She wanted an argument, a debate where she could paint me as controlling or insecure. I refused to give it to her. I ran 1,000 scenarios in my head, analyzed every variable, and saw the single perfect path forward. I smiled, a calm, genuine smile. "Sarah," I said, my voice perfectly even, "that works out perfectly." The look on her face was priceless. The triumphant, prepared for a fight expression melted into pure confusion. This was not in her script. "It does?" she stammered. "Absolutely," I said, leaning back on the couch. "It is a brilliant financial decision, sacrificing a little comfort now for a bigger payoff later. That is exactly the kind of thinking that makes me so proud of you." Now she was completely off balance. She had expected a storm, but I had given her a clear, sunny day. She spent the rest of the evening talking excitedly about how much she would be able to put into our house fund, how great it would be to have Ethan as a roommate, and how mature we were being about all of this. I just nodded and agreed, adding supportive comments here and there. I was the perfect, understanding boyfriend. Later that night, as she was scrolling through apartment listings with Ethan on the phone, laughing and making plans, I waited. I let her finish the call. I let her bask in the glow of her apparent victory. Then I walked into the living room and sat down across from her. "I have been thinking about what you said," I began, my tone serious and thoughtful. "And you have inspired me. Since you are making this big move to accelerate our savings, I think it is only fair that I do the same." She looked at me, a little wary now. "What do you mean?" "Well, I said, leaning forward. I have had this offer on the table for a few weeks now. A major project based out of our company's European headquarters. It is a 2-year contract. The pay is phenomenal, and it comes with a massive completion bonus. I was going to turn it down because I did not want to leave what we are building. But now, with you moving out to save money, it just makes perfect sense. I can put my things in storage, live cheaply over there, and we can put my entire salary plus the bonus towards our goal. By the time I get back, we will have enough to buy our dream house in cash. Her jaw slowly dropped. I could see the gears turning in her head, the panic starting to creep into her eyes. You took a job in Europe? I called and accepted it this evening, I said, lying as smoothly as I had ever told the truth. They are sending the final contract over in the morning. The project starts in 3 weeks. In fact, I am ending the lease on this apartment at the end of the month. The timing is just perfect, is not it? The color drained from her face. You ended the lease? But where will I stay when I come back to visit? Visit? Sarah, the whole point of this is to save money. Flights from Europe are expensive. We need to be disciplined, both of us. This is what you wanted, a smart financial decision. Then I delivered the final blow. And since we will be managing our finances separately for the next 2 years, we need to split our shared assets now. It is the only logical thing to do. I have already drawn up a spreadsheet of the joint savings account, the furniture, everything we have accumulated. We need to figure out who gets what. She just stared at me, speechless. The brilliant plan she had cooked up with Ethan, the one where she got to live with him while keeping me and my income as her safety net, had just been vaporized. She thought she was making a simple move. She had no idea she had just triggered a system-wide collapse. The look in her eyes was no longer confusion. It was pure, unadulterated terror. She started to pack that night, but not with the cheerful excitement she had before. She packed in tears. Update 1. It has been 2 weeks since the night I dismantled our future. The fallout has been exactly as I predicted, only more satisfying. Thank you for the support and the messages. It is good to know that clear, logical thinking is still appreciated in a world of chaos. The day after our conversation was a masterclass in backtracking. Sarah woke up with red, puffy eyes and immediately tried to cancel her plan. I was not thinking clearly, she said, forcing a laugh. Moving in with Ethan is a silly idea. I do not want to do that, and you should not go to Europe. We are better together. I just shook my head, my expression one of deep, sincere regret. I cannot, Sarah. I have already signed the contract. If I back out now, I will be blacklisted at my company. My career would be over. You know I cannot do that. I had, of course, signed nothing. The contract was a PDF I had spent 2 hours creating myself, complete with official-looking letterhead I copied from my company's website. But she did not know that. Besides, I continued, using her own words against her, you were right. This is a smart financial move. We have to think about the long term. A couple of years apart is a small price to pay for a lifetime of security. Every argument she tried to make, I countered with her own initial logic. She wanted to save money. This was the best way. She wanted to get our house faster. This would guarantee it. She had set the trap, and I was merely holding the door open for her. The process of splitting our assets was brutal for her. It turned out that our shared savings account was about 90% my contributions. When I transferred her portion, the exact amount she had deposited over the years, to her personal account, she was shocked at how small the number was. But what about all the interest? She asked, her voice trembling. That is allocated proportionally to our initial investments, I said calmly, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The furniture was another battle. She started pointing at things, the couch, the dining table, the television. We can sell this and split the money, she said. I pulled out another spreadsheet. This one had receipts. I purchased the couch and the television before we even met, I explained. The dining table I paid for myself as a housewarming gift when we moved in. They are not shared assets. By the end of the day, she was left with her clothes, some kitchen items, and a small amount of cash. The life she had taken for granted was revealed to be a life I had almost entirely funded. She moved in with Ethan a week ago. The first few days, my phone was silent. I think she was trying to project an image of success, of having made the right choice. She posted a few pictures on social media of her and Ethan drinking wine in their new apartment, with captions like, "New beginnings," and "So excited for this next chapter." Then the calls started. First, it was about the car. The car she had been driving was in my name. I had been paying the insurance. I called her and told her that since I was moving to Europe, I was selling the car and canceling the policy. She would need to find her own transportation. The panic in her voice was real. "But how am I supposed to get to work? Mark, you cannot do this." "It is a financial decision, Sarah," I said, my tone sympathetic. "I cannot afford to pay for a car I will not be using for 2 years. Next came the phone bill. She was on my family plan. I informed her she would be removed at the end of the billing cycle. Then it was the streaming services, the gym membership, all the little financial threads that had tied her to my income. One by one, I cut them all. Ethan, predictably, has been a nightmare. I have started getting texts from him. At first they were arrogant. "Dude, you really messed up. Sarah is amazing. Your loss." I did not reply. Then they became annoyed. "Hey, Sarah is a little short on rent this month. You need to send her some money. Do not be a jerk." I did not reply. His latest message, sent late last night, was pure desperation. "Mark, you need to call me. The landlord is threatening to evict us. Sarah cries all the time. You created this mess. You need to fix it." They genuinely believe this is my fault. They believe I am obligated to fix the situation they created. Their arrogance is matched only by their stupidity. They thought they could outsmart a systems analyst. They failed to understand that I do not just see the system. I know how to break it. I have not moved to Europe. I have moved into a new apartment across town. It is smaller, but it is all mine. The lease on our old place is officially terminated at the end of this week. Sarah and Ethan think I am packing for an international flight. In reality, I am just unpacking the boxes that contain my new, peaceful life. They have no idea where I am. They have no idea that I am not thousands of miles away, but just across the city watching their entire poorly designed plan crumble into dust. And the best part is, I am just getting started. Update 2. It has been a month now. The initial shockwave has passed, and I am now in the phase of observing the aftershocks. The story has taken a turn that even I did not fully anticipate. My plan was simply to extricate myself from the situation cleanly, and let their own poor planning be their downfall. But it turns out, when you build your life on a foundation of lies, the collapse is far more spectacular than you can imagine. After a week of increasingly desperate texts from Ethan, I received a call from a number I did not recognize. It was Sarah's mother. I had always had a cordial relationship with her parents. They seemed like decent people. I was wrong. Her mother did not waste time with pleasantries. She launched into a tirade about how I had abandoned her daughter, how I had left her stranded and destitute. She called me cruel and heartless. I let her finish. When she finally paused to take a breath, I spoke calmly. "With all due respect, Sarah made an independent financial decision to move in with another man. I have simply made some financial decisions of my own. She is your girlfriend. You have a responsibility to take care of her," she yelled. "Actually," I said, "I do not think she is my girlfriend anymore. And I would ask Sarah about her responsibilities to me and to our shared goals before you lecture me on mine." That conversation was the opening salvo in a new campaign, the guilt and shame offensive. Suddenly, mutual friends started calling me. They had all heard a heavily edited version of the story from Sarah, one in which I had a sudden mental breakdown, became controlling, and punished her for trying to be financially responsible. This was a variable I had anticipated. Before this all started, when my suspicions about Sarah and Ethan first began to solidify a few months ago, I had started my real work. I am a systems analyst, remember? I analyze data, I find patterns. I had installed monitoring software on our home network, not to spy on her emails, but to track data traffic patterns. I noticed that her data usage on her laptop and phone spiked late at night, and it was all directed towards social media and messaging apps when she claimed to be working. I also noticed that their shared online grocery orders, paid for from our joint account, often included expensive items I never saw, like high-end liquor and steaks. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I ran a background check. Not on her, but on Ethan. It turned out his financial situation was far worse than I imagined. He had 2 prior evictions and a string of unpaid debts. The owner of the apartment he was renting was a small, independent landlord, not a large corporation, a man who would be much more likely to take swift action against a non-paying tenant. I had compiled all of this: the data logs, the grocery receipts, a copy of Ethan's public eviction records. I had it all in a neat digital folder, my insurance policy. When the first mutual friend called to tell me what a terrible person I was, I did not argue. I simply said, "I think you have only heard one side of the story. Let me send you an email with some context." I sent them a link to a password-protected web page I had built. On it, I laid out the entire timeline, unemotionally and with evidence. I included screenshots of the grocery orders, showing the items that were clearly not for our household. I included the public records of Ethan's financial instability, and I included the most damning piece of evidence: transcripts from our home security system's audio recordings. The system recorded audio when it was armed or disarmed. I had captured several conversations between Sarah and Ethan from when they thought I was asleep or at work. The conversations were sickening. They had been planning this for months. It was not just about saving money. It was a deliberate scheme. The plan was for Sarah to move in with Ethan, and for me to continue funding her lifestyle: the car, the phone, her spending money, under the guise of our relationship. She would then use that money to support Ethan, keeping him from getting evicted while he got his new business off the ground. They laughed about how I was so trusting, how I was the perfect, long-term investment. They called me their retirement plan. I sent this link to every person who contacted me on her behalf. The calls stopped abruptly. The smear campaign died before it even began. I had not just countered her narrative. I had obliterated it with cold, hard facts. The best part was the call I received from her father. He was a proud man, and I could hear the humiliation in his voice. He had clearly seen the evidence. He did not yell. He just said, "I would like to arrange to pick up the rest of Sarah's things from your new address." He had somehow gotten my new address. It did not matter. I told him I would leave the boxes in the building's loading dock on a specific day. He agreed. He then asked a question that I knew was coming. "The car, she needs it for work. Is there any way she could just take over the payments?" "The car has already been sold," I said. It was another lie, of course. The car was sitting in my new secure parking garage. It was a sound financial decision. The silence on the other end of the line was my victory. He knew he had no leverage. He knew his daughter had been caught in a scheme so foolish and so greedy that there was no defending it. Sarah and Ethan are now facing the full consequences of their actions. Their landlord, who I may or may not have sent an anonymous tip to regarding his tenant's financial history and the precarious nature of his new roommate's income, has started the eviction process. Sarah is unemployed. Her company, a small firm where reputation is everything, let her go after rumors of her unethical planning started to circulate. It seems one of our mutual friends works in the same industry. They are trapped in an apartment they cannot afford, with no allies left to call. They thought they were masterminds. They were just amateurs who picked the wrong target. They tried to manipulate a system without understanding that I am the one who builds the systems. And I always build in a failsafe. Final update. It has been 6 months since my old life ended, and my new one began. The dust has completely settled. The silence from their side is absolute. The story is over, and I can definitively say that I won. Not just the battle, but the entire war, and I did it without ever raising my voice. The eviction I mentioned in my last update went through. Sarah and Ethan were forced out of their apartment. The image of them trying to move their things without a car, a detail I heard from a former mutual friend, is a source of quiet satisfaction. Their brilliant plan, hatched over months of whispered phone calls and secret meetings, ended with them standing on a curb, surrounded by boxes they could not afford to move. Ethan, as I predicted, folded under the pressure. He blamed Sarah for everything, for bringing her drama into his life and for getting him kicked out. Their great friendship, the one that was like family, dissolved the moment the money ran out. He moved back to his hometown to live with his parents, a 30-year-old man defeated by his own arrogance. Sarah's fall was harder and more complete. After losing her job and her apartment, she had no choice but to move back in with her parents. But the home she returned to was not the supportive sanctuary she expected. Her father, a man who valued reputation above all, was deeply ashamed. He had seen the evidence I had compiled. He knew the truth. He and her mother were providing her with a roof over her head, but the warmth was gone. She was a disgrace to their family name, and they treated her as such. I learned through the grapevine that she has been struggling to find new work. The industry she was in is small, and word travels fast. The story of her manipulative plan, backed by undeniable proof, has made her toxic. She is paying a long-term price for a short-sighted scheme. The final and most satisfying piece of this entire saga happened about 2 months ago. I received a formal letter from a lawyer she had hired. It was a demand letter, a desperate attempt to claim some sort of financial settlement from our 4-year relationship. It was full of legal jargon about emotional distress and implied partnerships. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman, had been waiting for this. We did not just respond with a letter of our own. We responded with a counterclaim. We filed a civil suit against Sarah and Ethan for conspiracy to commit fraud. Our case was meticulous. We had the audio recordings of them planning to use my income to support him. We had the financial records showing the money from our joint account being spent on him. We had Ethan's text messages demanding I send Sarah money. We even had a sworn affidavit from their former landlord about the nature of their tenancy and their conversations with him. The lawsuit was not about winning money. It was about making a statement. It was a final, undeniable declaration that I would not be a victim. Her lawyer dropped her as a client within a week of receiving our filing. Facing a lawsuit they could not possibly win, and with no money to hire another attorney, Sarah was forced to sign a settlement. In it, she formally renounced any and all claims against me, now and in the future. She also had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, legally preventing her from ever speaking or writing about me or our relationship again. My smear campaign insurance was now ironclad and legally binding. I walk away from this with everything. My finances are secure, my career is thriving, my new apartment feels like a real home. I have learned a valuable, if painful, lesson about trust and the importance of verifying data, even in your personal life. The job in Europe was, of course, a complete fabrication, a strategic maneuver designed to force her hand. I never intended to leave. Why would I? I had a front-row seat to the most satisfying system collapse I have ever witnessed. They thought they were clever. They saw me as a stable, predictable, and exploitable resource. They failed to understand that the most stable systems are often the most complex, and the quietest parts are the ones that control everything. They wanted to play a game of chess, but they were playing against a grandmaster who had already seen every possible move they could make. They did not just lose. They were dismantled. And my life is quieter, cleaner, and better for it. The storm is over. The silence that remains is peace.